Hey, entrepreneurs, executives, and spammers. We started the Pilot House email and customer retention team to crush targets. And in our fourth year, we are the best customer retention team in the Roman character set. We use campaigns to fire up the addresses you spent so much money to acquire and build effective automations that keep your engagement window fat and drive value that you can amortize over years. The cheapest customer is the customer you already have, and the most effective ad funnels go to high-intent audience. Come to pilothouse.co, fill out the lead form, and ask to speak with me directly. I'll give you a free audit. Back to the show.
In the inbox late night, glowing screens see the light. Email, everything feels alright.
Launch every single thing as a test, and I'll give you the strategy for it. Always do a subject line A/B and do 20% to one version, 20% to another version, and then 60% to the winner, and then 80% went to the winner. Once you've launched something, honestly, it's 5 times as hard to go in and do a split test. One, because segmentation on big lists is important. So if your list is starting to get big, you gotta start thinking about segmentation. It's the world's best email and retention podcast, and I'm your host, Jordan Gordon. We are a member of the DTC network of podcasts and the philosophical home of the Pilot House email and customer retention team. If you want to make the sweet nectar of low-cost revenue a large part of your digital ecosystem, then follow us on your favorite podcast app today. Last time, we started a 2-part series, How to Do Email Like a Billion-Dollar Brand on a 5-Figure Budget. Without any further delay, we're going to pick up right where we left off. Have fun spamming. Big brands, billion-dollar companies are testing everything. Okay, well, what are we saying here? How can we do email like a billion-dollar brand, but do it on a 5-figure budget? How do we do that? Well, what did we just talk about? We just talked about obviously leveraging automations, and I walked you through exactly how to do it. Super high class. The world's best email retention podcast is a high-class podcast. It is. We're the best of the best. Okay? So I just told you exactly how to do it the way that a big brand would do it. Because I spent some time at some big brands. Okay, they're optimizing everything. They've got their digital ecosystem. They've got their platform. They're not just willy-nilly adding and removing stuff all the time. They're being very thoughtful. They're like, are we going to add this in? Well, let's pilot it. Let's see if it works. If it works, we'll roll it all the way in. Why? They've got huge development costs. We are on these like, oh, we're going to just go and turn on this Shopify thing. Boop. And they just turn on the Shopify thing and, oh, it's on. It's not exactly what's happening for a big company. So they're like, let's pilot it. Let's get an idea if it's going to work. And then let's put everybody behind it, get all the political kind of capital required to organize our people around launching this initiative. You can't do that. You can't test, like pilot every single thing that you're going to launch for 3 months, get the significance, generate the buy-in. That's not going to work for you. What are you going to do? Launch every single thing as a test. And I'll give you the strategy for it, right? Now, what's the nice thing here? Well, then, if your whole system's full of these tests, you're just hunting for winners. As you're going through, oh yeah, this was a test, right? Oh, hey, that one really won. Roll it in as the main thing. Every single thing is a test. And you're just hunting for winners. And it's going to be a target-rich environment because you're going to just be, every single time there's a test, I mean, either there's a clear winner or there's not. And every time you see there's a clear winner, hey, there's a winner, right? Roll it in. Every single thing you launch is a test. So what are the different things that you could test? I mean, here's the strategy. The strategy is you get the whole thing done. You make it. And then just as you're going to launch it, you get really good at putting in the other version. What would we do? Here's the order. First, trigger. What is it that's triggering this thing, right? And I would include in that product feed kind of requirements. By the way, look, product feed, just do blend, which is purchase and view. Just do blend. But if you wanted to test it, so trigger, right? What is it that's making us, that's even starting this thing off? Is it a purchase? Is it active on site? Is it view product? Is it category? So you could do a trigger test. I'd say less common, super less common, but we're making a whole list here. Cadence. How long do we have to wait for the message, and how often do the messages go? Right? So, okay, the first one of these is going to go after an hour, and the next one's going to go the next day, or whatever, right? So cadence testing. After that, subject line testing, right? By the way, you should probably test things like your name that you have in the inbox. When someone sees you in the inbox, you should probably test your name too, but we're going to skip that. So subject line. Okay. Cadence was pretty easy. Just, hey, we're going to try 2 different time frames. And you load it in with 2 different time frames. Amazing, right? Subject. Just before you launch it, as you're doing it, you just think of another subject, right? We often get our writers to just write 2 subject lines. So there's just 2 available. That way our marketers wouldn't need to necessarily think of another subject line, because not all of them are not everybody loves writing subject lines. But honestly, if someone understands the brand well enough, I mean, we're trying to act like billion-dollar brands on a 5-figure budget. So yeah, at the last minute, write a second subject line and a second pre-header and put it in as a B, right? How much is this going to increase the amount of time that you're putting into this? Not a whole lot, right? For campaigns, always do a subject line A/B. Unless you've got something else you're testing, test subject line A/B and do 20% to one version, 20% to another version, and then 60% to the winner, and then 80% went to the winner, and you've got like your 80-20 right at a business school, and you're going to get statistical significance because 20% is enough. Boom, you do it every time. Hero shot or headline. Look, this is a bit different. If you built the email in Figma, it's a little trickier to do this. If it's an HTML email, just clone it and drag in a different image, or rewrite the headline. If you're not the design type, then just rewrite the headline. Write a second headline. You've loaded it as a B. All you have to do is write a headline. If you ask me, in email optimizations, the hero and the headline, man, it's like going to be the most time consuming. You're also like, it's not even super readily apparent when you're just inside the flow. What's the difference between the A and the B? You got to click around. You got to look. You want a target rich environment. You're hunting for winners. These ones are actually behind some bushes because it's in the email. So that's the one I'd recommend the least out of this list. We want just target rich environment, super easy to find wins. And what's the last one? Yeah, destination. So we started from the very top, what triggers it, and then where do we send them? So you could, run 2 different destinations. And you just put it in the name. To category page, to whatever, the shop page or whatever, right? So maybe that's appropriate to try 2 different destinations. Category page or, specific landing page. When you load this thing in and you've got all these, your whole system's running tests, you're going to just be going through, noticing winners, rolling those winners in. Once you've launched something, honestly, it's seriously 5 times as hard to go in and do a split test. One, because context. Your mind's already outside that thing. It's like, we launched this thing. We're not, I haven't thought about this for months. And now I've got to drag my brain into that space. I've got to look at the assets. Seriously, doesn't happen. I look at brands all the time. I audit all the time. What am I seeing? I'm seeing brands that have launched a flow 2-3 years ago, never looked at it. It's not even working anymore, or it's like the branding is wrong. They're like, I've got too many messages. I was doing these numbers for an audit, and it was like, look, a pretty big brand, and they had so many messages, so many automated messages that the average message was doing like $600 a quarter because there were so many. So they obviously had some hits, right? They were making big money, but then they have all these. And when you average that whole thing, $600 a quarter, dude, if you're a big brand, how are you going to justify the spend to go and optimize an email, an individual email that's doing $600 in a quarter? You're not. And so then no one goes and touches them. This is actually goes back to a big other important point that what I'd said earlier is like, it looks like you're getting all these emails and you're going to all these pages, but it's actually one email template and one page, and we're dynamically loading all the stuff in. That's the thing you're trying to do. So you want to have as few templates as possible. We do a standard 30 message build, right? And that's the whole shebang. Let's talk about segmentation. Segmentation on big lists is important. So if your list is starting to get big, you gotta start thinking about segmentation. Segmentation drives inboxing. If your segmentation's bad, your inboxing starts getting bad, not only for your campaigns, but it starts getting bad for your automated emails too. And then your cart abandons aren't going out. It's like, well, oh my God. Program starts really falling apart. We're no longer getting them in front of the recommended by category helper that's the whole purpose of the program. And then it's like, oh, well, we just ruined that by having a horrible campaign program. I have discussed this a couple times before on the DTC podcast, before the World's Best Email Retention podcast. And in one of my very first episodes, I promised to do a segmentation talk, and time just passed. Now, every time I've done this, I've done it a little bit different. And because obviously there's so many ways to segment. And look, guys, I can't recommend you more. Go back to DCC podcast, search my name. My name's not always on it. You can scroll through, I don't know, whatever. But a lot of those old episodes have a lot of just pure solid gold. And I try to bring back some of that solid gold, try to bring it forward. I think we're probably running another episode based on welcome content that was really good. But, also we're moving forward. I'm not spending all my time watching the DTC podcast episodes from 3 years ago, but I have discussed this before. Okay. But this is a unique take on it. So don't just scroll past it. Every time I do it new, and I try to find a new angle, right? So this time we're cutting in a product aspect to it and thinking about a brand that has, again, we discussed lots of companies. Look, if we just sold this and then sold this, we'd be great. Everything else would kind of just fall into place. So we're going to add in as efficiently as possible a product aspect to the lifecycle segmentation model that we've discussed before. Okay? And then we'll simplify in other places. It's a 6-segment model. 6 segments. And these 6 segments add up to a whole. And the whole is everything you'd want to email. Okay? So first, let's just discuss everything you'd want to email. Frankly, this is different for every brand. So you should not really pay attention to these numbers. Maybe pay attention to the ratios. You're going to have to test this for yourself. You need to spend time cloning your segments and running those segments with a change, with a hypothesis to the same message, and seeing hey, which one did better? You got to start doing that. There's no way to replace what you learn about segmentation than running an actual split test. That's where you learn everything. So, but let's just talk through this. First, number 1, permission. So can email, right? And also has subscribed. Of course. Now, look, if someone's purchased in the last 12 months, you have implied consent and they don't need to have subscribed, right? Pro tip. There is a way on a single segment to hit both people who've subscribed and people who haven't subscribed and have implied consent. It's a little, in Klaviyo, it's a little tricky in Klaviyo. I'm going to leave you all, because we're already deep into this episode, I'm going to leave you all to figure that out on your own time. If you don't figure it out, you got to just duplicate a whole bunch of stuff. And suddenly your 6-segment model becomes a 10-segment model. And that's just unwieldy. You know what? If it's a 10-segment model, it's going to decrease your learning. A bunch of the segments are going to be too small. It's not going to be useful. Blech. So permission can receive email and has subscribed, people who haven't subscribed who email all the time, they hit spam all the time. And I see this all the time in the audit process. Oh, you're not even paying attention to whether or not someone has given you permission, and you're emailing them 3 times a week, and you're in spam. Surprise. What do you all do? What do you all do when someone who you haven't really given them permission to email you, and they're hitting you 3 times a week? You're like, wait, I visited once and you're emailing me. What do? You hit spam. Of course. So why would your list do anything different? So first, permission. Can email them or has purchased in the last 12 months. Can email them, has given permission, or has purchased in the last 12 months. And then, again, these numbers don't matter. Just thinking about the relationships, the ratios. Subscribed in the last 30 days, opened in the last 60 days, clicked in the last 90 days, placed an order in the last year. Right? What are we doing here? We're saying, okay, the biggest indication that someone is going to drive traffic and spend in future is they've placed an order. By a long shot. If someone has placed an order, because what are we focused on? We're focused on, and you should be too, unless you're in one of these obscure little things we discussed earlier in the episode, you're focused on people who are going to drive traffic. People who drive traffic purchase. Period. They're not putting something in the cart if they haven't visited your site. So don't base your segmentation on who's opened an email. Right? Don't play the butter notes. So the most important is they've placed an order. That is a huge indication that someone's going to visit your site. They actually spent money. The next one, down by a lot, is they've clicked. It's still important. Click is still the next best one. But just because someone visited, it's not as huge of an indicator, right, that they're going to purchase. So it's just less, but also big, second biggest, right? If someone's visiting the site, that's an indication they're going to visit again, right? And then after that, opened. Okay. And of course, just walk away from Apple Privacy Opens. Just walk away from it, right? If it's Apple Privacy, then you don't want it. And then after that was subscribed, like they've given permission, right? They filled out the form. Why is that one the lowest? Well, I mean, if they fill out the form and they click on an email, it's clicked. So they've moved up. If they fill out the form and they open an email, they've moved up, right? So we're talking about people here who've subscribed and never been in the email. I'll tell you right now, that group, mad for spam complaints, just massive spam complaints. I mean, because that person, if they're only in there and they haven't been pulled into one of the other places in the hierarchy, it means they have not interacted with email, which is a very big indicator that if you keep emailing them, they're going to hit spam. Okay? Now, this is a very simple kind of 5-category universe for your segmentation. So this is 5 categories of people: permission, subscribe, open, click, purchase. There's so much more that we're not going to go into here, right? They've visited but not clicked. There's different kinds of visits. We just talked through a bunch of kinds of visits: active on site, viewed product, viewed category, right? There's how long has the address been in your system, right? There's all these very different, very important things that we can think about. You know, did they recently start a checkout? Okay. We're not going to go through all that. And importantly, every single one of those will have a different time period, right, for your list. And what is this time period really about? It's about how long can we push it before, one, they start hitting spam or unsubscribing, because Gmail does not like to see unsubscribes. They don't like to see spam complaints. They don't like to see bounces, right? Oh, by the way, there's also negative engagements that you need to account for: spam complaints, bounces, unsubscribes, and they need to be treated differently. So, like I said, I mean, if you're an entrepreneur or a spammer, like I'm just giving you a simple one, and then you want to add to it. If you don't add to it, there's a bunch of this other stuff. You're going to email people you shouldn't, and you're going to skip people you should email. There's only so much we can do on this one podcast. So there's a whole bunch of other stuff that ultimately you want to add to this. And what are these timeframes? These timeframes are: one, how long can we push it before negative engagements happen? And how long can we push it before Gmail and Yahoo straight start dropping stuff into spam? And how do you know when that happens? It starts affecting the open rate. The open rate really starts dropping, okay? I mean, if someone's placed an order and they haven't opened, they can be put in spam. Gmail doesn't know. Gmail doesn't know if they've placed an order. They know if they've clicked or opened. That's what Gmail knows. Have they clicked? Have they opened? So that's the kind of things that start getting negatively affected when your windows get too wide. And look, here's the important thing. We're not discussing this here on this list, but you actually need two windows. You need the engaged window and the unengaged window. We're just discussing 5 things here. You need the engaged window and the unengaged window because the engaged window hides the open rate drop from the unengaged. So you want to move these windows around and you're like, oh, after this point, we see our unengaged list starts tanking, right? For like open rate and click rate. Okay, they're going to spam, right? So point being, let's wrap this up. I gave you a nice, simple little model and you can play around with the numbers. And if you use that, probably be in a pretty good place. Okay. Now, I'd said it was a 6 segment model, right? Okay. And that's just one segment. What are we going to do? This is going to be similar. I did this before and it was a 5 segment model. And I actually had I had a client sign up and they're still with us. This was some time ago. This was back when we were on DTC podcast. And he said, I was doing these segments and then I thought I could do this, but I'm just going to call them. And then I got on the phone with them. Yeah. So I'll run this again. Right. So, but now it's a 6. I'm doing it differently every time. So it's just, I don't want to repeat myself. First thing we're going to do, take this one we just built, right? Which is our universe of what we think it's okay to message. And the first thing we're going to do is segment it by prospect and buyer. We've discussed this a million times. So clone it. And on one, say, has placed order 0 times over all time at the bottom. And the one at the bottom, say, has placed order once or more ever, which is added at the bottom. And there you go. Now you get your prospects and your buyers. Done. The next, we're going to do this product segmentation. We're going to add a product segmentation view. And by the way, this is not what we do. We do a 9 segment model, not a 6 segment model. And we don't have product segmentation in it because, our whole process is to take people from here to here quickly, right? And so we focus a lot on automation. So all of our product segmentation happens through automations. Oh, they're into this product. Okay, we're going to send them some automated messages for that product line. And that just helps us get more leverage. But like if you're running your own brand, I mean, you probably have some time to send some product focused campaigns as well, probably. Now, we're trying to boil this down to be as simple as possible, right? Because these billion-dollar brands have these huge lists. You've got probably a smaller list. So you can only dice it so much. And also you can only dice your time so much. So we're just going to split it up by has purchased hero product and has not purchased hero product. Okay. So the prospects obviously have not purchased hero product, obviously. So all we're going to do is clone the buyer segment. So we peeled off the prospects and not placed order ever, clone the buyer segment. And go to the bottom and we say has purchased hero product, whatever the hero product is. Your, hero jacket, your hero coffee grinder, your hero, whatever it is, knee brace, your hero, whatever the thing is, that if we just sold this and then this, we'd be tight. Okay. So have they bought that hero product? One is has purchased hero product ever. Another one is has not purchased hero product ever. So you add that to the bottom of the buyers. Then you got a little product life cycle. Never purchased, has purchased hero product, and has purchased but has not purchased hero product. So now One group we're going to market the hero product to, and the other group we're going to market the products that we want the people who've bought the hero product to buy. Look how simple that is, with just two different segments. You've got a whole different kind of campaign promotional strategy. And then so we've done life cycle, we've done product cycle, and then we're going to finish off with this interesting one. And like, there's lots of different ways to do this. Like I said, we're not going to do engaged, unengaged, because honestly, it's too much. I just told you like a dozen different things that are involved in that. It's too much. Okay. So we'll just boil it down to its simplest. Listen to this. Address was created greater than, so created date greater than or less than 365 days ago. Now, again, these date ranges do not matter. It's very unlikely that you plugged in every single date range I gave you and you ran it and it was like, hey, this is great. Every single list is different. You're going to have to toy with these things. But why do I start with 365? You know what? In analyzing a lot of different brands, I mean, I came here from the brand side. Honestly, I've learned so much. I'm better than I've ever been just by working on, using what I learned on big brands and working on all these different, it's like a little laboratory for me. And I'm like a mad scientist, right? I love it. Lots of brands have addresses that have been on their list for a long time. There was one client we worked with and that's when I discovered this. I was so surprised because I think about cohorts and I think about how long buyers remain buyers. At one point, my assumption was, yeah, you know what? You're probably an address is good for 2 years. After that, it's just toast. You probably heard me say it because it's just a good way to think. You get an address, you can do something with it for 2 years. But then we looked at their account and I ran engaged addresses per year. I went back like 5 years and it was like, there were still a lot of engaged addresses from 5 years ago, and buyers were a small portion for everybody, buyers are a small portion of your list. I mean, if buyers are the majority of your list, you're not driving enough traffic. You're not driving enough engagement, right? You need to be generating addresses. Those addresses get used not just for selling product, but they get used for brand reinforcement like we discussed. So that when people are sitting around the campfire and someone mentions the coffee grinder and they're like, oh yeah, I'm still getting emails by those guys. That is an unobservable brand impression that is critical for driving brand awareness. So yeah, you want to generate addresses, and just generating an address like a lead gen campaign, it's not very expensive. It's a much more affordable conversion than a purchase. So, I mean, when I was back 5 years, I'm like, still tons of addresses that are still, and you know how I work. I'm super strict on Apple privacy. It's like they were really engaging 5 years later, even not purchasing. Now, what's really happening there? Are they likely to purchase? No, they're not likely to purchase. What's happening is they are triggering an engagement often enough to stay inside of a window that we would think would be safe to send campaigns. And then we send a lot of campaigns in that very tight window to try to get that. Why a tight window? To stay on side with Gmail and Yahoo. And then they just open again over that period of time. And they stay in, right? Now, that grows your list. That list is not just, that list is useful for your advertising team. They can target on that list. That list is good for brand reinforcement. And some of them are going to buy again. So if you're reaching a point where you're like, we're paying too much for addresses in Klaviyo, yeah, go back and just suppress some of those. But what are we talking about here? We're talking about third category. We had prospect buyer, has bought hero, has not bought hero, and then created. So when we say created date, so it's a binary, less than 365, more than 365. The less than 365, that's this year's business, right? Oh, hey, there's this year's business. I'm looking at it right here, And the other stuff, that's previous year's business. Now, if you are a young brand, like if you are a seed stage brand, 365 it's going to be too much because like, hey, we've only got a year and a half of buyers or of customers. Okay, yeah, so don't do it by 365. Obviously, like I say, these numbers are not your numbers. These numbers are the numbers that you got to play with these numbers. But it's kind of interesting. Hey, there's this year's business. And what does it include? Because it's 1 year, no matter what, it includes one Q4. It includes one Black Friday. You know what I mean? It includes one Labor Day. It's just the whole shebang. There's this year's business. And that's how this year's business is doing. And then the other group is previous business. So what are we doing? We're going to our 3 that we made and we're cloning them. And we're making one less than 365, one more than 365. You guys, that is a dynamite segmentation model. Oh my God. We don't use it. We use something more sophisticated, but that doesn't mean this isn't awesome, right? Oh my God. So this is what I would like. I would like somebody out there. If you've been listening to me, first of all, thank you, right? If you've been telling your friends, please do some more of that. Okay, somebody go to Klaviyo. Make that segmentation model. Contact me and tell me how it went. Tell me if you're like, oh my God, this revolutionized my segmentation. I bet you it does, right? And now, look, you've just got this stuff in there. You're thinking about it like huge brands do. Hey, here's my last year's business. What have we talked about? I didn't include it in this talk, but I guess I'd better loop it in just to make sure. What's all this driving? How to billion? I mean, I've given this exact talk, so I didn't include it here because it would just been a duplicate. But now I guess I have to. So what do big brands care about? They care about their base. Your base is total, all customers ever, your base. Then after that is active base. They've purchased in the last 12 months. And within active base, first time buyer, they've placed an order only once, and active first time, and then active repeat. They've placed an order in the last 12 months, and they've placed more than one order ever. And you want, that is it's a snapshot, and you want to run that snapshot year over year, every quarter or something like that, to see what's actually happening inside your list, right? I mean, share of active base that is repeat is a very important metric. Here's why it's important. You look at your repeat rate in Shopify. Look, also a super important metric. Not like that's not important. But if you are driving a lot of repeat from a small group of whales, it's going to look at like a high repeat rate. But like, let's say you're changing kind of products, you're shifting products. There's situations where you could have 2 bases. You can go back and find the episode where I talk about customer base and talk about situations where you're shifting product strategy. And so you actually need to have an old base and a new base, and you need to run them simultaneously to figure out how people are shifting between products. Super sexy analysis, right? So if you've got a group of whales that are driving all this repeat, it could look super healthy, but if you don't see your active repeat base growing, that's a leading indicator that, I mean, any business that has a shrinking active repeat base is getting less cost efficient because repeat buyers are cheaper to drive purchases from than new buyers because you get them to repeat through email and SMS, which is cheaper, right? We've been discussing this for years on these podcasts. So it's important to have that base, first of all, just to measure, just to balance what you see on your repeat rate, to understand what's going on. Conversely, you can be in a situation where you really pump your email system. Let's say you spend less on advertising, right? So you spend less on advertising, your active first-time base is going to decrease, but you really pump your email. And what you could actually see is you could see your active repeat increase in size, even though you're spending less, because you're pumping email, right? And what you're doing is people who were going to fall off, they don't fall off. They get brought back in. Now, if you suddenly started spending less on advertising and your active first time dropped, of course you're going to see your repeat rate increase. Of course, right? Because it's a zero sum. But if you don't have that active base to understand what's going on under the hood, and you don't see that relative strength of repeat base versus first time, repeat active base versus first time active base, if you don't have that confirmation, you don't know to what extent your repeat rate is up because you're just spending less versus your repeat rate is up because your pumping of your email system actually pulls stuff forward and your persistent revenue ecosystem is working. So all this stuff, everything we're discussing is ultimately stored within your base. That's where it all goes, right? Your base is the pond, addresses that are never purchased, and then the stuff that I just discussed. That is the final resting place of every activity we've just discussed. Now, so interestingly, I say our recent stale was created in the last 365, greater than or less than 365. Hey, there's the last year's business. So you can look at the last year's business through email, and then you can go to your base analysis, which of course you're doing because you've been listening to the World's Best Email and Retention podcast. Of course, you're measuring your base and looking at it all the time, right? Well, you can look at your last year in email. Hey, this is how the last year in email looks. This is how our base is looking. What a cool way to look at a segmented revenue report at a Klaviyo and compare it to your base. I hope this was enough. It's like I came to this episode thinking like, hey, do email like $1 billion brand on a 5-figure budget. That's what we're talking about. And so some of this stuff was really cerebral, but also just some really practical stuff, right? Just really practically how you deal with recommendations by category, and how to just put someone into that funnel, ways you might control the frequency and the cadence, or reasons you might control the frequency. We didn't go through any specifics on that, but I gave you some reasons. You could figure it out by yourself. I mean, look, the segmentation model I just gave you all, entrepreneurs, executive spammers, and webmasters, now that we are doing CRO on the team as well, I just gave you something better than anything I've ever seen in any audit I have ever done at Pilot House. Okay? So somebody out there, why don't you do it and just drop a line to us? You can go on pilothouse.co, fill out the lead form. Honestly, I'm not going to hard sell you. If you came on and if you just even wrote a note, hey, I did it. This is what happened. Or if you came on and met me, I'm happy to meet you and just talk through. I just told you how to do it, so I'm happy to look at it with you, right? Obviously, it's fucking dynamite, right? And if you are having trouble with your campaigns, there's two things. There's one, frequency and audience, right? So how big's your audience? How frequent? You could be having a problem with your email program because you're sending like mad emails, or your segmentation could suck, right? Yeah, thank you all very much once again for lending me your ears. I hope you all have a great week and have fun spamming.
In the inbox late night, glowing screen, see the light. Email, everything feels alright.
Hey entrepreneurs and spammers, remember, you can't scale without email, and the cheapest customer to acquire is the customer you already have. So please subscribe to the World's Best Email and Retention podcast and learn how to make low-cost revenue a big part of your digital ecosystem.